Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure for me to be here and to present our study from the ViSC Program, Fostering Intercultural Competencies in Schools. The ViSC Program is a program which was developed in Austria from Dagmar Strohmeier and Christiane Spiel, and it's a violence prevention program, but it's also a program to foster social and intercultural competences in children. And before I go to more detail in the program, I would just tell you a short description of the situation in Austria, in schools in Austria, because in Austria we have a very high, diverse student population. So on the whole, in whole Austria there are about 18% of students who speak another first language than German. And in Vienna, in our city where we are now, there are almost 52% of pupils who speak another first language than German. And we have mainly two non-German speaking immigrant groups. The one is from former Yugoslavia, which is about 30%, and the other big group is from Turkey, and it's about 13%. So, however, we have several school districts, and there's a high variability in the consistency of the student population. So there are some classes with a very high percentages of immigrants, and then we also have classes where there are almost no immigrants. So this is also a very important aspect to consider when we look at the different classes. So this is just a short overview. And however, so in these classes, there are a lot of opportunities to build up intercultural friendships. However, despite this diversity in classes, the friendships between adolescents with same cultural backgrounds are still more common than these intercultural friendships. So although we have a high diversity, the pupils have friends with same cultural friends. So, and why is it like this? So there are two principles how friendships can be established, and one main principle is the principle of similarity, which means that pupils become friends with each other who are similar to each other. So, for example, gender is a very obvious variable, so girls want to be friends with girls, but also age is relevant, and in the intercultural context, especially the cultural background is very relevant. So people from Austria, for example, want to become friends with other Austrian pupils, or pupils from Turkey want to become friends with other Turkish pupils. So this is a very obvious characteristic. However, also other variables like interests or personality are other aspects of similarity. And so if it's not only these first three aspects which I talked about. And this is one very strong predictor of friendships, but it's of course, with respect to intercultural friendship, very relevant if there already are intercultural peers in the classroom. So if there's, for example, a classroom where there is almost no peers from other cultural backgrounds, then it's not possible to build up intercultural friendships. But in classes with many different cultural groups, there are more opportunities to have intercultural friendship, and thus, therefore, it's also necessary to take this aspect of the availability of different cultural peers in the classroom into account. So, and for another reason why it's important to study intercultural friendships, because these intercultural friendships are really very beneficial for immigrants, but also for non-immigrant youth. So for the non-immigrant youth especially, it's important to reduce prejudice and to be more tolerant towards other cultures. But for the immigrant students, it's very important to have intercultural friends in order to get integrated in the new society and to have, get to know to other cultural contexts. And so as we know, this is very important nowadays because we have so diverse population to be tolerant and to accept ethnic diversity. We need to have programs to foster these intercultural friendships. And in order to do this, it's necessary to build up certain conditions which are important that pupils get into contact with which other. And these are already formulated 1954 from Allport. And he already pointed out it's necessary that the pupils in a situation that they have equal status, so that they are not that one pupil has more rights than another, or one pupil has more resources than another. So equal status is a very important precondition. Another important precondition is that pupils work together on common goals. So they have a task and they build together and they have a goal which they want to reach together. And so also to reach this goal, it's necessary to have cooperation with one another. And the fourth important condition is that the authority is supporting them. So if they're a teacher in the classroom who really foster this intercultural contact. And this is the ViSC class program. Of course, the ViSC class project or the ViSC program is a program to reduce aggression and to foster social competencies. But the ViSC program also draws on this principle of the contact theory. So the teacher in the classroom really brings together the students and really tries to work on these common goals. So the ViSC program is a primary preventive program, as I already pointed out, and it's designed for secondary schools between grades 5 and 8, and has the main goals to reduce aggressive behavior and stop bullying, but it also has the goal to foster social and intercultural competencies. And this program is a whole school program, and it lasts one school year. And during these school years, the teachers are trained, and also the pupils take part in this class project. And this program, as I already mentioned, was developed by Dagmar Strohmeier and Christiane Spiel in this part of the Austrian national strategy Together Against Violence. And with this strategy, there were several programs developed in order to prevent violence. And the programs has several theoretical foundations. So I don't go to that into detail, but just that you see this is a really good theoretical founded program. So one aspect is the social cognitive theory, the concept of instrumental and reactive aggression, bullying as a group phenomenon, social information processing theories, and then, which is important with regard to the intercultural friendship, the principle of intergroup contact theory. So this is several theoretical aspects, and in the concrete development and in the concrete implementation, the ViSC class program consists of 13 units, and each unit lasts 90 minutes, so this is 2 school lessons. And these 13 units are implemented within 1 semester and during regular class hours. And these units have, there are 3 phases, and they have different goals. And between unit 1 and 8, there is the impulse phase, and in this phase, the teacher worked together with his class or her class and work on a material which was developed for the lessons from the teacher, and they have a manual and they work on different topics. And then there's a reflection phase during Unit 9 where the students are able to reflect on the program and what they learned in the program. And then, which is very unique in this program, there's between the unit 10 and 13, there's the action phase. And in this action, the teacher is no more the leader, but he gives the decision to the group, and this, the task is for the group to develop a common activity. And this common activity should be for all a good thing, and everyone should like the activity, and so that this principle of the common goal and interest is, so especially in this action phase, transported. Yeah, then the class level units, so there are these 8 class level units, and they have different content. So for example, in the first phase, they get some information about the program, and especially in the first phase, it's very important to talk about rules and what rules are important in the classroom. But then they also learn how to recognize aggressive behavior, learn about different forms of aggressive behavior, but also they learn how to manage their emotions, and also to recognize emotion in other pupils. So, and with regard to this intercultural competencies, there's also a unit focusing on dealing with different cultural diverse groups. So this is also one chapter or one unit which explicitly is on this topic. And to make it more concrete to you, I will show you some pictures from such a class project. So there are these different units, and they have all the same structures within these 90 minutes. So first they get the task and the work by their own on the individual, and they were supported by the so-called ViSC coaches. So these are, or if it's the teacher, then the teacher supports them. And after this individual work, they go together and work in small groups. So they exchange in small groups of 4 to 5 pupils, and they talk about their ideas and what they discovered by their own, and they write it down on a poster, and afterwards they present this poster in the whole group. So the whole group can now look at the results of the different small group works, and they can make a discussion together. So this is how the units work, and of course, in order to make it more interactive, there are also some interactive games in between or after these sessions. So the idea is that first they have this single word, then they work in small groups, and then in big groups, and also they have interactive games and plays in order to have a more active part. So, and these are these 9 units, and then the class level action, they decide during the unit 9, in the reflection phase, they decide together what they want to do. And we already conducted the ViSC program in many schools in Austria, and there are some examples of what they did in this action phase. And for example, in one school, they said they want to make a movie together. So, and they played a situation how to behave correct against older people, and they made it kind of how do you do it correct, and how do you you should not do it. And so, but it was very creative because the kids did it all by their own. So the teacher was just the coach, but it was the idea of the kids, and they really did it by their own. And then they also showed it at the end of the school year to all other pupils. And another idea or another project that was not, this was having a picnic together. So they just said they want to go outside in the forest and have a picnic. And then they thought of how can we make a picnic, what do we need, how can we prepare it. And then they worked together on this, they prepared the food, and then they went to it was on the Donauinsel, I guess, and then they sit down in the grass and had a nice event. So this was also a very successful project because they had really this nice goal and a successful event, which every one of them liked very much. And so just to give you an idea how this intercultural principle, this contact theory principle was implemented in the ViSC program. And the study was already evaluated with respect to violence prevention and bullying behavior, because this was the main goal of the program. But because we have this intercultural aspect in this program, we also were interested whether it was after the program more intercultural friendships compared to a control sample. So the question was whether in ViSC class, compared with classes without interventions, were less same cultural friendship preferences after the program. So the idea was that the intercultural friendships should increase in these ViSC classes. And of course, we have this many different cultural groups. We were interested whether it's more effective, the ViSC program, for example, in groups with immigrant backgrounds, or maybe it's more effective in groups with non-immigrant background. So these were the two main questions we looked at. And in order to do this, also we have a very complex randomized control group design with where the schools, oops, it's too fast. Now, yeah. So in December 2008, all secondary schools located in Austria were invited to participate, and then 34 schools applied for this program, and then we choose 13 schools to run the ViSC program, and the other 13 schools were asked whether they want to be a control group. So this was a randomized intervention control group with a very high methodological standard. And we measured at 2 time points before the program and after the program. And on the whole, in this sample, 11 ViSC schools took part and also 5 control schools. And there were 2 measurements. One was in June 2009 with 1,020 students, and the other one was in June 2010 with also about 1,000 students. And half of them were girls, and the age group was between 10 and 15 years with a mean age of almost 12 years, and it was conducted in grade 5 and 6. So, yeah, and concerning the consistency of the groups, there were 40% natives, then 15% former Yugoslavian, 15% from Turkish background, and 26% came from other countries. So they were quite different countries in this mixed group. And of course, we had a lot of measures, but we were interested in friendship. So I just tell you short how we measured friendship. So we asked the kids to nominate the 3 best friends in the classroom. So we just asked, who are your 3 best friends? So we really wanted to know the best friend, not just a kind of companion, but a very intimate and close friends. And then we differentiate, because they each nominate all in the class, whether they nominate each other, then it was a reciprocal friendship, but sometimes also kids nominate another one and was not nominated by this other peer again. So this was kind of a unilateral friend. So they wanted to become friends with the other one, but the other did not nominate him. So this is also important to differentiate, because if you nominate each other reciprocal, then it's a really very close and strong friendship. But if you have just a unilateral friendship, so you like the other person more than the person likes yourself. So therefore, it's important also to differentiate between these 2 variables. And then, as I told you before, we also looked at the context, as of whether there is really availability of different cultural peers in a classroom, and not just to have the description how many different cultural peers were selected from each other, but also to look at this opportunity structure. And this was done with a quite complex formula. I don't go into detail, but which is especially important is the second part of this equation, where this availability was taken into account. So, and then we got a number for the interpretation. It's also important that this the opportunity index, which was developed by Dagmar Strohmeier, has a range between -1 and +1. And -1 means that you have a preference for intercultural friends, so for different cultural friends, whereas +1 means you have a preference for same cultural friends. So this means, and if you have a 0, then it's equal both. But it's important for the interpretation to keep in mind that +1 is a more same cultural preference, and a -1 is the preference for intercultural friends. And the data analysis was done with the SPSS program, and we run ANOVAs with time intervention and groups of students. And we have 2 dependent variables. This is the same cultural preference for unilateral friendships and the same cultural preference for the reciprocal friendships. And we compared the intervention and control between 2 measurement points. And now I'm going to present the results. First, for the unilateral friendships for the whole sample. And here you can see the control class is the green line, and the ViSC class the orange line. And you see there's no difference between these groups between time 1 and time 2. So it doesn't make a difference whether they attend the ViSC program or not with respect to the intercultural preference. So it was almost the same in both groups and almost also in at both time points. So then we also looked for the same, whether it is different in the reciprocal friendships. And there again, there were a slight difference, but it was not a significant difference between the same cultural preference in reciprocal friendships. So in the ViSC program, it stayed stable, whereas in the control group, there was a slight increase in same cultural preferences, but however, it was not significant. But then we also checked for the different cultural groups. Perhaps it works different in different cultural groups, and there we found only for one group that there was an influence of the ViSC program on the groups, and this was for the reciprocal friendship preferences in the group of Turkish students. And it was not that the Turkish students had a higher same cultural preference after the program, but it increased in the control school. The same cultural preference increased, so the Turkish student get more preferred their own cultural group at the second time point, but in the control group, it stayed stable. So this means the ViSC program has a kind of buffer effect, that the Turkish friendships stayed the same, but in the other group, this group get even more higher preferences in the same cultural friends. So to conclude or to summarize, there are no differences between the ViSC classes and classes without intervention in the unilateral and reciprocal same cultural friendship preferences after the program. And it's only effective in fostering or in just buffering reciprocal intercultural friendships in one group, namely in the Turkish students. And thus it might be necessary just not only to make this more implicit principle of the context theory, but maybe also to implement more units which directly addresses the topic of cultural diversity. So it was not the main focus of the program, but however, as we have these principles, we thought it also could work in this way. So, but we think there are some quite small results which could be promising for future directions. And furthermore, there's another issue which could be a reason why it doesn't work that strong is the program was mostly implemented in the 6th and 7th grades. And thus, maybe it's important also to already implement it in 5th grade, so when the students come new to school, and then they can form new friendships, but in the 6th and 7th grade, they already have friends, and friends are quite stable. So therefore, this might be another reason that the program needs to start earlier in school when really the classes come new to each other and the kids don't know each other. And another issue is, which we can will make in further research, is that the classes are quite different. So we have a high variability in class climate, but also in the consistency of cultural groups. So we should also look at ethnic diversity and also a class climate and make analysis which take the ethnic diversity into account. So these are the primary results. So I think they are interesting. However, we need to work further on this issue in order to foster intercultural friendships. And I would like to thank you for your attention, and I'm looking also forward to questions after the last presentation. Thank you very much.